Welcome to Mind, Body Monday, and thank you all for joining me. In today's session, you're going to learn about the 5 top kinds of food intolerances, 5 signs if you have food intolerances, and more importantly, what is the actual root cause of food intolerance. And because you are here live, you get to ask me questions at the end of the session. If you're watching a replay, you can type them in the YouTube comments, and I'll come back to you as well. If you're new, welcome. My name is Avraham Gundle. I'm the founder and director for the Center for Integrated Medicine. I'm trained as an osteopath, a naturopath, and I practice functional and integrated medicine. For the last 30 years or so, I've been privileged to help many people recover from a diverse range of chronic health conditions, be it digestive issues, autoimmune conditions, diabetes, eczema, just to name a few. So let's just jump straight into our topic. And that is the topic of food allergies and food intolerances. But let's just zoom out just for a moment, because there are 2 types of allergies. There's airborne and inhaled allergies, and the second type is food intolerances and sensitivities. So in today's Mind Body Monday, we're going to take a deeper dive into food allergies and intolerances. And I did give a Mind Body Monday on airborne allergies as it relates to asthma and bronchitis and upper respiratory issues. So you can always have a look at past replays for that. So I'm just curious to know, go ahead and type in the chat if you have any known or you suspect you have any food allergies or intolerances. So go ahead. If you think you could have a food allergy or a food intolerance, or some food bothers you, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, you're not sure, just go ahead, type in the chat. And if you see me looking over, that's because I've got 2 screens, and that way I can see you and see the screen at the same time. Super. Okay. So also, if you're here first for Mind Body Monday, I just want to quickly announce my long-awaited Heal Your Gut program. I'm looking for a small group of people who will want to take a deeper dive with me and end their gut issues for good. I'm going to work to eliminate all the confusion and frustration and avoid being on over-restrictive diets forever. So if you want clarity and to get to the root cause of your gut issues, with my personal guidance and direction every step on the way, just type gut health in the chat. I'll come back to you with some more info. And a Mind Body quick disclaimer. It's very important to know. I know that you are regulars to Mind Body Monday, and if you're new, I'm here not to advise or diagnose or treat any health conditions. This info is rich and only for information purposes only, educational purpose only. It does not in any way substitute for proper medical advice. I'm sharing my stories, my practice, clinical experience with you. I personally believe in individualized care, so it's super important before making any changes to speak and connect with your health care advisor. Let's jump into our topic of food allergies and sensitivities. About 32 million Americans have some sort of food allergy or intolerance. About 26 million are male, are adults, and about 5.5 million are kids. And this number is escalating. And you're going to understand why this number will only be going up unless people join Mind Body Monday and begin to understand the root causes of what's going on. So hold on to your seats as I go through some of the five kinds of food allergies, intolerances, what's the difference between them, and most importantly, what can you do about it towards the end. So the first thing is to establish is really what is the difference between a food allergy and intolerance. So right out of the gate, it's a confusing issue. Because food intolerances behave in the body sometimes like food allergies. But the Mayo Clinic defines it globally as a food allergy is actually an immune response we know people, we've heard of people who have, let's say, an anaphylaxis reaction, which is a very serious life-threatening reaction to, let's say, peanuts or corn or something like that. They may at best carry an EpiPen around with them. That is a food allergy. There's a global immune reaction going on. A food intolerance is much more on a micro scale. It really affects the gut mainly and causes a whole host of very uncomfortable symptoms, and I'm going to get to those shortly. So that being said, even though food intolerances are not as serious as a food allergy, it's very, very important to identify them. Hence, I'm going to share with you 5 kinds of food intolerances and to treat them. Because if you don't, they could really snowball into a much more serious health challenge. And you're going to understand why shortly, because I'm going to show you a video, under 1 minute video, which will help you understand what's going on inside your gut. So let's look at 5 types of intolerances and how would you know if you have any of them. So the 5 intolerances are lactose intolerance, a FODMAP intolerance, a sucrose intolerance, a histamine intolerance, and a salicylate intolerance. Let's take a quick look at each one of these. A lactose intolerance is a basic inefficiency of the digestive system to handle any form of dairy products. That means milk, yogurts, a little bit somewhat, cheeses perhaps, and this causes major abdominal discomfort. Now, some people think that, hey, if they have a lactose intolerance, that's an intolerance to the sugar inside dairy products, then they can just take an enzyme called lactase and they'll fix the problem. Well, they have in a way compensated, but it's definitely not the right way to go for the long term. If on an occasion a person, wants to go out with a pizza with friends or have a milkshake or something and they are at lactose intolerance, then taking lactase enzyme is a really good idea. But for day in, day out consumption of food, if you're lactose intolerant, it's not a good idea to take the enzyme. I see it a bit like, speeding on the highway and you think you're safe because you're wearing your seatbelt. It's definitely better wearing your seatbelt than not, but it's better not to be speeding. And this is what happens when the gut is exposed day in, day out to a food that is an irritant to the gut. This will wear down the immune response over time. But more than that, taking the enzyme could also mask other digestive disorders, because most people, a fair amount of people who have a lactose intolerance also have other digestive diagnoses as well, like IBS or IBD, for example. Let's look at number 2, FODMAP. That's FODMAP. FODMAP is an acronym for a certain class of carbohydrates called fermentable short-chain carbohydrates. The full acronym, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it goes like this: fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So it's a mouthful, hence we have the FODMAP acronym. Basically, these are sugar molecules that are linked together in a chain, and they're fermentable by your gut bacteria. But for some people, these FODMAP foods cannot be broken down at all or broken down very poorly and cause major gastric symptoms. So some of these FODMAP foods, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, includes dairy products, wheat-based products like bread, crackers, and cereal, etc., beans and lentils, and certain vegetables like artichokes, asparagus, onions, garlic, for example. But the list is much, much longer as well. The third example of a food intolerance type is sucrose intolerance. Sucrose intolerance results from the inability to digest sucrose, just like lactose intolerance was the inability to digest milk sugar. Sucrose is the inability to digest simple sucrose, table sugar. Now, sucrose is found in quite a lot of items, cane sugar and maple syrup and fruits and even a few vegetables. So people who can't digest sucrose will have a hard time dealing with those foods. The fourth kind of intolerance is called an histamine intolerance. And the name is a little bit confusing because it doesn't mean you're intolerant to histamine. It just means that there's an indication you've developed too much histamine in the body. And we all know from insect bites or stings, whatnot, what happens. There's a swelling, person can get headaches, sneezing, hives, etc. But histamine can also affect the digestive system in significant ways. So if a person has too much histamine in the body, there are lots of medical reasons for this. Then if there's digestive implications as well, it's a good thing to know about, because taking the right forms of treatment could eliminate that digestive distress completely once you have a clear diagnosis of what's behind that. And the fifth one is called a salicylate intolerance. Now, these are found basically in certain plants, berries, and foods high in these chemicals are berries. Coffee is very high in it, broccoli, cauliflower, cucumber, mushrooms, spinach, zucchini, and the nightshade family have these salicylates in them, like eggplants and potatoes, peppers, and tomatoes. And interestingly enough, I was working with a patient this week who came to me with a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. And from my experience, I know that this group of foods is highly irritant to the immune system in general, but the joint system, the synovial membranes of the joints specifically. And by having the patient just remove these nightshades, high salicylates containing foods from their diet, will almost immediately, within 48 hours, help ease the joint system. That's just an important aside as it relates to this. But having this intolerance to this compound, the salicylate, will also impact the gut significantly. And people with IBS or IBD also tend to have a salicylate sensitivity. So let's just pause for a moment, take a nice deep breath in. There was a lot of information coming at you, and I felt it was important. You can breathe out now. And I felt it important just to give the 5 types of intolerances, because we may have heard of, most people have heard of, let's say, a lactose intolerance, but FODMAP is not so common unless one's got a digestive problem, or histamine is not that common unless one has a digestive problem. So when people come to me complaining of long-term digestive issues, I have one of the many things I have in the back of my mind is these 5. And how do I go around identifying it and navigating this world, diagnosing correctly for them, and putting them on the correct eating plan to restore healing to their gut and to their life. Now, let's look briefly at the 5 main symptoms of what food intolerance can do to the gut. And then I'm going to share with you what is a possible root cause. So 5 signs that you may have a food intolerance. What do you think they would be? Go ahead, just type in the chat. What do you think? What digestive challenges do you think a person would experience? Yes, someone's written stomach pain, bloating, gas, immediacy. Very good. There are certain, these are telltale signs that there's some sort of digestive distress, very often brought about through a food intolerance. So we have gas and bloating, there's cramps, it could come and go in waves, an urgency for the bathroom, low energy and brain fog. That's also very important. And the 5th one is more of a catch-all. It's runny nose or eczema, hives, and possibly headaches. So this is very important. And the 6th one is really also mood changes. The person can become anxious or have a low mood and just feel in a bit of a fog or a slump. Yes, Ilana's written fatigue, very important. Symptoms such as bloating, diarrhea, discomfort. Robin's written in, very good. All these are very important to know, and most importantly, not to ignore. It's almost like you're driving on the highway, and on the dashboard, lights shine up, the orange light for the oil, or the red light for the wheel tire pressure, or something going on. Now, you have a couple of options. You can just put a little napkin over it and cover them over. You can certainly ignore it. You can bash them out, or you can just pull over to the nearest mechanic and diagnose and treat the problem. Because sooner or later, that car is going to stop, and generally speaking, at the least convenient time and place. Same thing with our gut, same thing with our body, is to take the time to listen and pay attention to what sorts of distress is going on, what could be behind it, what did you eat, how did you eat, how did you approach your eating, your mindfulness or relative lack thereof, whatever happens to be, because that's all important. How much you ate, all this is very important in getting a clear understanding and pathway to healing for gut issues. So let's take a quick look at what I think is one of the most important root causes of intolerances. Because in my practice, I've seen people coming in with a whole long list of foods they can't eat. And at the end of their day, they've got 5 or 6, maximum 10 foods that they can eat. And each week, that list gets shorter and shorter until they've got 5 foods that they're sort of rotating on, which is not a good idea. There's no way you can get your full nutritional requirement for the long term from just a short list of foods. And what's going to happen? That list will become shorter and shorter unless a person deals with a root cause of this condition. So the food allergy, or the food rather intolerance, is sitting on another issue. And it's like the elephant in the room. Unless a doctor is practicing functional and integrated medicine, it will be missed, because the understanding may not be holistic or integrative enough to understand what is really causing, what is behind, what's driving that food intolerance. So really, the way I see it is that food sensitivities are generally not caused by the food itself, but they're driven by a mechanism, and that's called intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut syndrome, which I believe is a major trigger to general inflammatory responses in the body, but specifically to food intolerances as well. In a previous Mind Body Monday, I went into great detail. We took a deep dive in leaky gut syndrome. So if this is of interest to you, you can refer back to a previous Mind Body Monday session. But just for today, I want to give you a 10,000-foot overview quickly of just the main point as it pertains to our discussion here today with food intolerances. So really, what is leaky gut? And the understanding is like this, that our gut is made up of a barrier called tight junctions. And when there's a compromise to these junctions in the gut, it's like a wall. And it's like a picket fence, you can see it. When that picket fence, someone's removed one of those pickets, if that's the correct word, then there's a gap. And, intruders can get through from the outside world into your property. So these tight junctions is the name of that internal picket fence, if you like. And when they become compromised, then food that we've eaten gets through the gut without being properly digested and processed, and it triggers an alarm and immune response in the body. Hence food intolerances or immune reactions or autoimmune conditions as well. What I'd like to do is show you a quick explainer video. So you can turn up your volume for this one. I'm going to share with you a video that will give you a little insight in terms of what is really going on here. So let's have a look at this one.
Our intestines are lined with barrier cells, called epithelial cells, that transport nutrients from food into our bloodstream. These epithelial cells have tight junctions between them to ensure that no undigested food particles, digestive waste, or toxins escape into our blood and create health complications. Healthy epithelial cells are supported by a balanced microbiome of good and bad bacteria, which is supported by a nutrient-rich intestinal environment. Stress, poor diet, lack of exercise, and use of antibiotics can disrupt our microbiome and intestinal environment. These disruptions can lead to weak epithelial cells and loose epithelial junctions. Without tight junctions, undigested food particles, digestive waste, and toxins can leak out of our intestines and into our bloodstream, causing inflammatory immune responses, various digestive disorders, and changes to the normal function of the digestive tract. This is often called leaky gut.
This explainer video is really important for people to get. This is at the root of food allergies, food intolerances, and most autoimmune conditions. And the work that I do with my patients is really about education around this particular area and going about healing and repairing that. And it really requires a very holistic, integrated, big picture perspective, because it's not just about taking one pill or one supplement or staying away from this or eating that to get it sorted. It's a lot more complicated and nuanced. So as the video explained, there are many possible causes of a leaky gut. But I want to just mention a quick 7 that I've seen in my practice. And the first one, most people are surprised they hear it, but they don't realize how important it really is. So I'll put it on at number 1. And that is high sustained emotional stress over time disrupts this intestinal membrane. And that's why it's so important to take care of your emotional health and well-being. That is a key piece of healing your gut from the inside out. Excess alcohol and possibly even caffeine is second on the list. And if a person celiacs and eats gluten, that's obviously not a good idea at all, but that will definitely compromise the gut membrane even more. The video did mention medications, and this is a very important one. I have patients who suffer from migraines or joint issues, and they take painkillers or Tylenol, ibuprofen, or antibiotics at a whim for any cough and sniffle. And these medications will definitely, over time, damage the gut lining. So they are not sustainable for the long term. Steroids as well are very, maybe life-saving, but the downside is that they will impact, amongst many other things, this gut lining. Dysbiosis, which is imbalance between the good and the bad bacteria in the gut, affecting the microbiome, and as a result, disrupts the gut lining. And then poor quality sleep. Sleep is our best friend, so making sure that you get the quality and duration of the sleep that you need, because while you sleep, your body potentially can be healing. And if you're not waking up feeling refreshed and ready for your new day, then there's a sign that something is wrong. Just take a look at a kid. We have our grandson staying with us at the moment, and he's just gone 2 and a bit. And he wakes up in the morning, and the whole neighborhood knows about it, with energy and boisterous activity and fun and giggles. What happened to us adults that we wake up and we're not vibrant and happy? We got lifed, so to speak. And the process of healing is reclaiming all the approaches to health and well-being, so we can wake up feeling fantastic. And there's a pathway to accomplish that as well. And then the 7th item that can compromise the intestinal barrier is having refined oils in one's diet, processed foods, artificial sweeteners, things like Splenda, Sweet and Low, Equal, mayonnaise, which also contains canola oil or processed vegetable oils. All these items, I'm not even going to call them food items, they're really non-food items, damages the intestinal lining. So this is a big piece of healing gut issues, a big piece of healing our health and well-being and eliminating all those symptoms that we spoke of before and you typed up in the chat. So from a functional and integrated medical perspective, leaky gut describes the environment of the gut and hence to something else going on. And it's on this compromised environment that food intolerances will emerge. And hence, with the rise of junk food, fast food, unconscious eating patterns, then food intolerances will just continue to grow until we pull back the reins and begin to eat nutrient-dense, eating whole, full, good quality foods that are going to heal us from the inside out. So quick summary, we looked at the 5 types of food intolerances. We looked at the 5 signs of whether a person may have food intolerances and addressed looking at the root cause, in my opinion, of what food tolerances is all about. So if you missed the beginning of Mind Body Monday, I'm very excited to announce the launch of my new Gut Heal Your Gut program. And if this is for you and you want to heal your gut from the inside out with my guidance and avoiding all the confusion and frustration of trying to figure it out on your own, then you just type gut health in the chat. I'm going to come back to you with some more information. So thanks again to you all for joining me on Mind Body Monday. And just remember, Mind Body Monday is all about self-care being the heart of healthcare. All you need to do is take one small step to advance your health and well-being in mind, body, and soul. I look forward to seeing you next week.